maybe one prediction so the audience can see this. It's 61,414 as of right now. You predicted it's going to get to what, 100,000 by the end of the year. Some people are saying 2 or 3 times higher than you by the end of the year. And you predicted 2026, Bitcoin's going to get to 1 million. And the way you described it is because an event that's going to take place in 2024. Do you mind unpacking that and explaining what you mean to say Bitcoin's going to get to 1 million by 2026?
Yeah, so this all goes to the programmatic monetary policy, right? So when you look at Bitcoin from a structural standpoint, 21 million Bitcoin will ever be created. The way that that enters into the circulating supply is back in 2009, 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes was put into the circulating supply via something called a Bitcoin reward that we can talk about later. And so that happened every 10 minutes, 50 Bitcoin are put into the circulating supply for 4 years. After 4 years, there was a supply shock where that 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes went to 25 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. So it was written into code. People knew it was happening, but it got cut in half, right? It's called the Bitcoin halving. When that event occurs and you have a supply shock, if demand continues to grow at the same rate, you naturally will get a repricing of an asset, right? Supply goes down on a daily basis, but demand stays constant or goes up. The price has to move up to accommodate the change in the supply schedule. So 50 to 25, 25 for 4 years. It then got cut in half again to 12 and a half. Did that for 4 years. In May of 2020, it ended up getting cut in half again, as it was scheduled to 6.25. And so back in 2019, I said, look, when this halving occurs, there's going to be a repricing of the asset, right? The supply shock is going to drive the price higher. And so 100K was the number. Now, the reason why I say $1 million by 2026 is that in 2024, there is going to be another supply shock. There will be another cutting in half from 6.25, right? 50% reduction. And so naturally what just happens is when those supply shocks occur, there's a repricing by the market of the asset. Now, what's really fascinating about this, if anyone studies kind of financial markets or looks at financial assets, is that in the traditional world, there's commodities like, let's say, gold that use stock to flow analysis. Stock to flow simply says how much gold is in the world, and then how much is coming in on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And you try to predict both the supply side of the equation and the demand side, and therefore it gives you future price predictions. Well, with Bitcoin, you know with 100% certainty the supply side of the schedule. So I know exactly how many Bitcoin there are today, and I can tell you on each day into the future with near 100% accuracy how many Bitcoin there are going to be. So when you can model out with accuracy the supply side and it's programmatic, you only have to focus on predicting the demand side, right? Because I know with certainty in the programmatic monetary policy supply, so now it just comes down to demand. And so what you can do is you can basically just extrapolate out. We've got 12 years of data. Well, what's the growth rate of people coming into Bitcoin? And you just continue to extrapolate that out. And what you start to realize is this stock to flow analysis is deadly accurate, right? And so naturally, when you see that, sure, are there days where Bitcoin trades above or below where it's supposed to be? Of course, right? It's a volatile asset in some ways. But at the same time, the direction of this thing is very, very accurate because 50% of the supply demand equation is known. And so in this crazy, crazy world, Bitcoin is actually a more predictable asset than almost any other asset in the world because it's fully transparent.
So at the way you described it, you said gold is what, 10 trillion? You said gold is 10 trillion. Right now, Bitcoin is $1 trillion. This is potentially going to end up being twice as big as gold because with gold, you can't really track. With this, it's more trackable. It's easier. So $20 trillion market, the $20 trillion, that breaks down to be $1 million per Bitcoin. Do you think it has a possibility in 2031 to get to 5 million? Do you think it has a possibility by 2040 to get to 10 million? Or do you think it's going to get to a point and kind of level off and stay there for a while?
So let's remove the time scale from the conversation for a second, right? Sure. To have an accurate prediction, you need to have an event and you need to have a time, right? But let's take away time for a second and just talk about directional progress. The reason why some of these industries are so big, right, around stores of value, art, real estate, right, et cetera, a lot of commodity markets, is because the dollar is devalued. Right? If the dollar wasn't devalued, if you could simply get paid in dollars, leave it in your bank account and have the same or more purchasing power in the future, you would never get out of the dollar. You would just simply save, right? If you go to let's say a country like India, where the culture was, you basically got gold and then you just pass the gold on from generation to generation to generation, right? Well, in the US and in many developed countries, you can't do that because the currency is being devalued. So you're financially incentivized to either consume goods and services or to invest the capital, right? And that's part of the velocity of money and all this kind of stuff. So that is a feature of the system, not a bug. When all of a sudden you can simply save in an asset, a currency like Bitcoin, you can get paid in Bitcoin and simply leave it there, people will stop or drastically slow down the rate of investment into other store of value assets. That's why you see gold going down and people simply saving in Bitcoin. You can look at high-end art. You can look at real estate in the future. And so in a crazy way, I personally believe, without a time prediction on it, that one day Bitcoin will be $100 trillion asset, right? It's 100x from here. Now, does that take, does that take 1 year? Does that take 20 years, 50 years? I don't know, right? I don't want to get into kind of the time component because that's the hardest part of that prediction. But what I do know is that it's not crazy to think that if Bitcoin is a, let's say, 100 or 1,000x improvement on the technology front than gold, that naturally, if you just are a 10x better or bigger market cap than gold, then you would be 100 trillion, right? Because gold's 10 trillion times 10 is just 100 trillion.
Yep.
And so the other part of this that becomes really crazy is we're talking about in 2026 being 2x the current gold market cap. Right? Today, we're sitting at $1 trillion Bitcoin market cap to get to 20 trillion, 20x, 2x the gold market cap. Well, the conversation that no one's happening is when does the flippening happen between Bitcoin and gold? It's not when Bitcoin gets to 10 trillion, because by the time Bitcoin continues to grow, gold's market cap is going to continue to contract. And if you look at the actual distribution of ownership in gold, everyone always likes to point and say, oh, well, you use gold in your cell phone and all this technology and stuff. 7% of gold usage or ownership is due to any sort of technology application. The majority of it is in store of value and jewelry. Jewelry demand for gold peaked in 2013 and has been on the steady decline since. The store of value, we just saw central banks in Q4 were net sellers of gold. Gold's market cap is going to continue to contract as the world gets digitized and people literally drop gold and shift capital into a digital store of value. And so my guess is that the kind of flippening of gold and Bitcoin's market cap is not going to happen at the 10 trillion. Maybe it's at 9 or 8.5 trillion. And so you start looking at this very crazy world and you start saying, wait a second, these are not static numbers, right? Gold's market cap eventually may be 2 trillion just because people dump gold and they start moving into other assets.
So if you like this little short clip from an interview I did, click over here to watch the entire interview. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.